once the what's the term? Once the sweat starts flying, right? It's no longer a joke. Now it's real. They find out what they really have. They find out if this guy is better than they expected, not as good as they expected, or you know, exactly what they wanted. So you can have players that come in and quite honestly blow the roof off of everything. What was it? 20 oh, what year was it? 2013? What year did the Ravens last win the Super Bowl? 2012, right? So 2012, after that season, the Seattle Seahawks traded or made a quarterback a free agent or traded for this quarterback, veteran free agent, and brought him in. And then in the draft, in the third round, they drafted Russell Wilson to be the backup. I forgot what year Dallas did it with Dak Prescott because they already had Tony Romo. But these guys were drafted to be backups in case the starter got hurt or provide competition or whatever. But Russell Wilson picked up the offense and worked so well within the offense with Seattle. They looked at the guy they signed and was like, we have something better here than we expected. And Russell Wilson became a starter as a rookie, and they jettisoned the other guy. You can look at Tom Brady. Tom Brady was drafted 199 overall in the draft. I think that worked out to be the 6th round in the draft. And when Drew Bledsoe got hurt in the game against the Jets, he got blowed up on the sideline and messed up his kidney was lacerated or something. He wasn't going to play the rest of the year. Tom Brady wasn't even expected to be his backup, but he worked his way up to be second string. Brady came in and never looked back. Drew Bledsoe never got his job back. So it happens, man. The players can be worse than expected, can be better than expected. You just never know till things start, people start hitting. Those bodies start flying.
Everyone that went round one is going to be a millionaire?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I can guarantee you everybody from rounds 1 through 4 probably are signing $1 million contracts. There ain't no question. Those guys are they're already getting paid. They're I'm not gonna say they're already getting paid. They can start counting the money, right? What's the line from the movie with Cuba Gooding Jr. and Tom Cruise? Show me the money.
Show me the money.
They know it's coming. They know it's coming. They know they got it. It's going to be in the bank. They're going to be good to go.
As a advisor and a very good friend of mine, how much do you think they're willing to pay for their own independent DJ that's willing to follow them around and play their theme?
Be the theme music dude, like I'm gonna get you sucking.
Yes. Every great superhero
needs his own theme music. Exactly.
So what do you think they'd be willing to pay? A pretty good DJ that may be willing to do it.
I mean, I know this is gonna sound bad, but it's gonna sound bad. It just they are. Dumb enough to blow your money or having a DJ walk around behind you, then you're willing to pay a whole lot to, and it was funny during the draft. One of the former players who came up to announce the draft said, when he took the mic, I see a lot of you young fellas wearing diamonds and all that. I'm gonna tell you right now, save your money. Those diamonds don't put food in your belly. And 10 years from now, you're going to want that money. Who was I talking to recently? We were talking about Real Housewives of Atlanta, right? A kid that was here, played for the Ravens for a while. He and his wife are on that show.
You know what Bart's got?
No, Bart is doing okay. Hartwell, Ed Hartwell.
Ed Hartwell, yeah.
Ed Hartwell is on that show, and I mean, he's probably got more money than you and I combined, clearly, but he ain't got that NBA money. NFL contracts and NBA contracts and baseball contracts are completely different animals. If you go in the NBA and you get a $400 million contract, you getting they're paying that 400 million. Now after taxes and your agents and all that, that's a whole nother thing. But they're gonna pay out that whole $400 million. Baseball, baseball will pay your contract no matter who you traded to, no matter what. As we know with Albert Bell and Bobby Bonilla, the Orioles were paying those contracts long after those guys retired. They get all that money. NFL, their money's not guaranteed like that. So you see big signing bonuses, and they look at who's making the most money. The size of the contract is at 250 million, 260 million, 251 million. Like everyone plays that game, they want to make a little bit more than the guy who signed their contract before them, but they get a big signing bonus because if they get cut, if things don't work out, they don't get the rest of that money. That money just goes away. The NFL claws it back, and if you get traded, then there's things that play with that money. And then the salary cap, if your salary is too high and it affects the salary cap too much, they'll try to renegotiate it, spread it out further down the line. If you don't want to do that, then players get cut and they become free agents. It's a big game the NFL plays with people and their money.
Whose job is that?
Whose job is which?
To maintain the budget, be aware of the budget,
Oh, and for the team, it's like they have a financial person. It all runs through, for us, it all runs through Eric DaCosta, but there's like people who watch the money. For a long time, it was for the Ravens, it was a guy named Dick Cass. He retired. Now we have Sashi Brown, who's the president. They're all in on those contract negotiations and keeping track of what the salary cap is and how close or far away we are from the salary cap and what the implications are. So yeah, every team has a team of people doing that, and that's why you need a good agent or really good with your money, like Lamar is like Roquan Smith is. To make sure that they make sure they get contracts, they make sure they get the most of that money.
Who comes up with the number though? Who says, all right, we got, John Davis in front of us. We're going to offer John Davis $32 million.
It's a negotiation. It's the agent. Agent's going to try to get you as much as you can. That's their job. The team is going to try to give you as much as they can that they can afford to give you, but not give you everything because they want to hold that power over you. And then you got to look at the NFL salary cap per year. Each team is given X amount of money they can spend. And, if they exceed that amount or get close to exceeding that amount as far as play, then they got problems. We got to let somebody go if we're going to give him. If we got to give him 10 million, we only have 9 million a year to spend. He wants 10 million a year. In order to do that, we're going to have to make some adjustments. Some people are going to have to be cut, or they go to other players and say, look, we're going to convert this amount of your salary into bonuses, easily attainable bonuses that you can get to make that money up. That way it doesn't show up on the books as part of the salary for this year. So they play that game if they want to do it. If they have the player they want, and they can make it happen, they'll move the money to make it happen. We saw that with Lamar 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. So look, let's get off football because I'm getting all juicy. I'm getting excited. My body's starting to sweat inside, and I want to see people hitting. I want to be out there and losing my voice, screaming at football players and like Haloti Nada did when he announced the pick for the Ravens, had his kids just say, Steelers suck. Mm-hmm. So, and I said that because I see Phil Dorsey is watching. He's a big Steeler fan. from Pittsburgh, good guy. Other than that Steeler fan stuff, he's a good guy. I'm going to jump into some things real quick. Let's talk about uh, this trial. We last week the Trump trial. Last week I talked about what the implications are of Trump being held in contempt of court. Right? We had that whole conversation. We as parents, Sanity, we as parents or children, our parents told us, don't do this, don't do that. If you do this, there are implications and ramifications for doing that. And we all end up walking crooked a little bit sometimes because we didn't trust the word.
Couldn't sit down.
Couldn't sit down, right? Because our parents made it their business to make sure we understood that they meant business. Any regular person in this country that has to go up against the judicial system for whatever reason, unless you have deep pockets, you're fighting a uphill battle. Always being innocent is not always being right or being found innocent. If you've got money, you have a better chance of coming out of the system either unscathed or standing in better stead, maybe even beating the system, as we saw OJ beat the system several years ago, 20 years ago. But if a judge says to you, don't say this, don't do that, don't do this and say that, and tells you if you do, you will be held in contempt of court, anybody else, normal people, won't do this and won't say that. But if they do, the judge will put their asses in jail, give them a fine. They face ramifications. I always think about the movie My Cousin Vinny, where the judge told Joe Pesci as Vinny, I'm going to hold you in contempt of court. And he would go to jail overnight. Donald Trump was told, do not go on social media, do not have press conferences, do not threaten, talk bad about, put people in jeopardy by talking about jurors, people who work in the court system for this trial, the staff of this judge, the judge himself, or you're going to face contempt court consequences. And Donald Trump went straight out and talked to the media outside the courtroom. He posted on social media. He talked with people from Fox News. They put up everything they wanted to talk about jurors. Juror number 2 wearing such and such today really is a hidden liberal, not really here to help me win the case, whatever. And he did that because he's been doing that his entire life and getting away with it. This judge actually brought him into court and held him in contempt for 9 instances of breaking that court order of the gag order, and 9 counts at $1,000 a count. He got a $9,000 fine and was told to immediately take the stuff down, which he did, and because he had to learn that this judge was serious. Now it's only $9,000, which for a multimillionaire, which we believe Donald Trump to be, that wasn't a lot of money, but his behind was going to jail if he had not taken that stuff down. Now, would it have been 4 hours? Would it have been 6 hours? Would it have been 8 hours? Would it have been overnight? Don't know. And it probably would have helped his cause politically with his base of supporters, to say, yeah, the system's against me. but the system is supposed to be against him. The system is supposed to be against everybody. The system is supposed to be fair, but it's not fair. They say you're innocent until proven guilty, but in reality, you're guilty until you can have enough money to prove that you're innocent. Now, people can dispute that if they want, but the undeniable fact is, you, me, any Joe Blow off the street, if we are told not to do something or we'll be held in contempt of court, we don't get a warning. Like, that is your warning. You don't get a second warning. You don't get a third warning. And for Trump and his people to think, well, he shouldn't be treated like that is just beyond stupid. Like, he is in the eyes of the law, he is facing implications because he's been trying to do things like he is above the law. And the one thing this country is supposed to stand for is no one person, nobody is above the law. And whether you believe that to be true or not, this judge is showing that Donald Trump is not above the law, and he can go out and pontificate and bloviate all he wants, but he's facing charges, and he's on trial now because the things he did were against the law and illegal. And they can spin it and they can try to use whataboutisms all they want, but the reality is the man is on trial because he's trying to prove that he's above the law, and has thought his entire life he could get away with doing anything, and said it. I can get away with murder. I can shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and I'll be okay. And we're trying to find out if that's true or not. And if that is true, then America, the system that we have been raised to believe all our lives, is a lie. So he's in deep trouble. He's got his former associate who ran the National Enquirer, has testified against him, come out and said, yeah, we would work with him to go against his political enemies. We would work with him to hide stories. We would catch and kill stories that would do him harm. And which means, let me clear that up. What that means is, let's say you, Rock, have pictures of you with Donald Trump at a party, and you all are drinking and hanging out with 12-year-old little girls. And now Donald Trump is running for president, and you say, you know what? I can make some money off of this.
Exactly.
I could take this story and sell it to CNN and MSNBC, all the Inside Edition, TMZ. They'll pay money for these stories so they can have the exclusive and put that story out there first, right? If the National Enquirer got wind of you trying to sell your story, they would come to you and say, yeah, well, I'm gonna give you $65,000 to let me have that story, that exclusive. And you could say, well, MSNBC is offering me $100,000. The National Enquirer would offer you $110,000, and they would outbid everybody till they got your story, and then you get paid, and you would sign a non-disclosure, non-compete and NDA, and the Enquirer won't print it, and the Enquirer wouldn't print it, and the story's gone, and you can't then go to MSNBC and say, yeah, give me whatever, and I'll tell you what I already told the National Enquirer, and then they'll sue you. So they did that for years to cover Trump's, but let me change that. Trump's behind. And they did that to help his career. And it started years ago, but after the Access Hollywood videotape, which is, for those who don't remember, that was the videotape where Trump was caught on a hot mic on the Entertainment Tonight bus talking to Billy Bush and he didn't realize his mic was on. He was talking about grabbing women by the pussy, and they'll let you do whatever you want to do if you're a celebrity. And he knew one woman that because he was Donald Trump, he moved on her like a bitch so he could get what he wanted. And then he tried to spin that to say it was just locker room talk, and as if Trump has ever been in anybody's locker room, other than probably when he owned the New Jersey Generals and the USFL League, probably walked through that locker room. And because of his celebrity, people bought that as oh, he's just boys being boys. And where that would have been talk that would have killed anybody else's campaign 5 years before, 10 years before. You can look at Gary Hart. You can look at John Edwards, even though John Edwards did some really dirty dirt. But you can look at these people and their political careers were over after something like that. But after he got away with that, then the National Enquirer worked really hard to keep any Trump stories from the national press, any way to verify things that were rumored. You've got people now who were saying they had a long-term affair with Trump while he was married to Melania, that the National Enquirer had bought their stories and killed it. You've got, there's a whole belief out there that Trump had a love child with somebody and that money was hushed up. So there's a whole lot that we need to figure out what is really going on, what really has happened. But the National Enquirer was working really hard, working overtime to keep those stories from being put out there in the media, so he looks like he's squeaky clean, and we know he's not. So the scary part about all of it is if he's allowed to get away with things like this, if he's allowed to use these cases as fodder to become president again, this country, and I hate to keep, because it starts to sound kind of like spitting in the wind, but this country is not the country that even we as Black people know it isn't. We were sold a bag of beans, but we would definitely be in a very bad place. We're talking about a man who oversaw an attack on the Capitol of the United States. He emboldened the enemies of America worldwide when they saw that the sitting president of the United States fought against a peaceful transition of power, the thing America has held up to say we are better than everybody else in the world. Look at us. We have peaceful elections and losers go away and they work to better the government, better the people, even in defeat. And we're not some banana republic. We're not some emerging country. We're not some third world country, which is, I've been told, a politically incorrect term to use these days. But he blew that myth right out the window. And if that's not the country we will live in, then nothing is sacred. There would be nothing to keep shows like mine from being taken off the air if he's running the Justice Department and says he doesn't like what I said, and they could shut me down, shut you down. There would be no more freedom of press because he's already said a lot of the press is enemy of the state. That's a designation that people don't understand the implications of, even though the movie was far-fetched. But in reality, if someone is deemed enemy of the state, the agencies in the United States will spare no expense to get that person. You can ask Osama bin Laden. You can ask any other people in Al-Qaeda that bubbled up to be number 2. If you were number 2 in Al-Qaeda, your ass was going to get got. If someone's, even before they got bin Laden, well, this person became number 2 in Al-Qaeda, and then 4 days later, Number 2 in Al Qaeda was blown up at his compound. Like, they were coming after you because they were deemed enemies of the state. And when it's internal, they use the FBI, they use NSA, they use all means necessary that were greenlit and set up by George W. Bush and the FISA court to find, to look for domestic terrorists, which is interesting because apparently there are some militia and white supremacist organizations that still don't get classified as enemies of the state or domestic terrorists, and they're allowed to keep operating in the shadows. The Proud Boys, while being investigated for years, were allowed to operate until January 6, 2021. So if he becomes president again, and even though I don't think it'll happen, but and you never say never, it's not a far push to say, like, a lot of freedoms that we think we have now would just go away. And it's scary, man. It's scary on levels that I can't even begin to totally wrap my head around, because you think America is the greatest country in the world. We know we have horrible healthcare compared to other developed countries, but we could just run into a buzzsaw of things that we just aren't ready for. We just weren't used to. Even though it is tough to be anyone in this country, it's really tough to be a Black person in this country, even today. It just would become really, really hard to want to stay in this country. And you got journalists who said they're not. You got people in the legal profession who said if Trump becomes president, they're leaving. And they're serious about that shit. They're not just saying, oh, I'm going to leave. They're serious. They'll up and leave because they don't want to deal with another Trump presidency. I myself would find it hard to stay. I'll be honest with you. Because I don't want to live in the country that's not the country I spent the last 60 years of my life learning to survive in and hopefully be able to thrive in most of the time. So I want to get off the Trump train because everybody's talking about the Trump train and what's going on with him these days. But I want to segue into something deeper and more concerning. But before we do that, at the top of this hour, I want to do a little self-plug. You've been after me for I don't know how long about doing this self-plug. I'm going to do this self-plug. As you know, I have my smoking meat business. I be smoking is what I do. I'm not bragging that I think my ribs are really good. I'm not bragging that I think my smoked turkeys and smoked hams are pretty good. I'm just stating what people have told me. You've tasted my ribs. You've tasted my turkey. You tasted my ham. What do you think, right?
On the grounds of what I may say may convict myself, I am going to implement my Fifth Amendment right.
Okay, so
nah, man.
I know you. I know so. There's a gangster. There's a true street thug out there that will fight you if you say my ribs are the best ribs you ever had. But you ain't got to be scared. I got your back, bro.
I don't need you to have my back short as he is. She need you to have my knees. Nah, listen, man. If we wasn't friends, I still would give you an A+. I'm a fat boy, so I'm a food connoisseur, and anytime I could sit there and claim a whole brisket to myself.
See, I was trying to save the brisket for last, but like I gotta
Man.
tell you right now, I'm gonna tell you right now, if you never had my brisket, my ribs are good, my ham is good, my turkey's good, but I make the best god daggone brisket in the state of Maryland, and I dare anyone to tell me I don't. Straight up, it's right there. It's right there. But this is summer, man. When for summer you do ribs, and Memorial Day, I'll be smoking is having a rib fest. I'm going to be cooking a mess of ribs. Every pig in America should be worried that they about to lose some sides because it's going to be Rib Fest Extravaganza 2024, Memorial Day 2024. It's ribs, ribs, ribs. $25 a slab, $15 a half slab. Come get you some ribs. Give me a call. Look me up. I be smoking on Facebook. I be smoking smoke Ribs Barbecue on Facebook. Get at me. Put your order in. Start putting your orders in now, because I'm working a deal right now where I'm going to be selling ribs to a restaurant in Catonsville, and I'm not going to mention the name of the restaurant till I get everything finalized. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'd like to thank the little people who helped make this possible. And by little people, I do mean Luca Brazzi, Nicole Moten, the queen of the Keebler elves, and no, but yeah, man, this is gonna be big for me. I'm looking forward. I'm in negotiations. Um, the way we're talking about it is you'll be able to buy my ribs as a meal at their establishment, a carry-out meal as their establishment for Memorial Day. But if you want to have ribs for a cookout, contact me. I'll be smoking. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram. And my phone number is 443-471-6199. Get at me. Let's get your rib order in. Come with your money. 50% deposit is due on order. Before I put a rib on the grill, I got to have at least 50% of your money for your order, because I've been stiffed before. I can't be feeding people for free. You know, I tell people all the time, even my mama paid full price. But that's coming up for Memorial Day. So I'll be talking about it more as we get closer, and I'll be posting on my Facebook and Instagram as the details come through about what restaurant and where and how to do everything you need to do for that. So now I got that out the way. I got my plug out the way, my self plug. The issue I want to talk about tonight is I want to make America aware of a couple of people who need to be famous. One person, well, let's run down the names. Let me run down the names. So these people who you need to be aware of and need to know about, and they need to be people that should be on your lips on a regular basis. Jeremy Cooper, Randy Rodema, Jason Rosenblatt, Nathan Woodyard, and Peter, I think I'm going to get this right, Peter Ciccione, or Chuniak. I'll spell it Cichuniec. Let me tell you who these people are and why these men should be famous. We should know these men. There was a young man named Elijah McClain in Colorado. Elijah McClain was a young man who was on the spectrum. He had some life challenges, but he was a functional member of society. He was a very shy, introverted young man. By all accounts, a beautiful spirit, loved animals, and I mean loved animals. He played the violin and would go to animal shelters and play music for animals in shelters. People in his school loved him. No one had a bad thing to say about Elijah McClain. And one night in 2020, Elijah McClain was walking home wearing a mask, as we all were in 2020, and was stopped by the police. Being that he was on the autism spectrum, being that he was introverted, he did not react well to the police stopping him and being questioned because he was walking while black. Confrontation took place where the police were trying to restrain Elijah McClain, claiming he was resisting, when in reality, all body camera footage shows Elijah McClain just trying to be left alone and saying, just leave me alone. I just want to go home. I'm not doing anything wrong. Just leave me alone. And the police grabbed him. Police officers grabbed him, wrestled him to the ground, and he struggled hard. And because he was on the autism spectrum, because he probably could not fully understand what was happening to him, because he was a young black man in Colorado just trying to get home, he probably exerted every bit of energy he had to just be free. And the police called for paramedics, and they instructed the paramedic unit to give this young man, who was a very thin guy, very slight young man. Then they instructed the paramedics to give him a shot of a chemical called ketamine. Now, I didn't have time to do the research to look up what all ketamine does and the dosage, but I'm not paid to do that. I'm not a paramedic. But they gave him a dose of ketamine to calm him down, and they overdosed him. They gave him more of this chemical than his body should have gotten, even though he shouldn't have gotten any of it. They forcibly injected a chemical into this kid to calm him down, to restrain him. And it killed him. Walking home by doing nothing wrong, by doing nothing more than being a young black man walking home in a mask, wearing a mask, the kind of mask we all were wearing in 2020 to avoid catching COVID. He lost his life as a direct result of the police stopping him and instructing other first responders to restrain him and inject him with a chemical, a medication that his body could not handle. The police officer who directed this assault on this young man is named Randy Rodema. Paramedic, whose name I can't pronounce, Peter Ciccuniec, Cichuniec, and paramedic Jeremy Cooper held him down and gave him this injection. Police officers Jason Rosenblatt and Nathan Woodyard were present and did not stop this from happening to this young man. Randy Rodema, police officer, was found guilty of criminal negligent homicide. Peter, I'm going to just call him Peter because I can't pronounce his last name, was found guilty of criminal negligent homicide. Jeremy Cooper, paramedic, was sentenced to 4 years probation. Jeremy Cooper was the paramedic that actually injected Elijah McClain with this 500 milligrams of ketamine. He got 4 years probation. And he was given probation because the judge said he showed contrition. He said, "Oh, I feel really bad." He said to the family during the trial, "I wish I could take it back. I didn't want to see this as an outcome." 4 years probation. What do you think the likelihood of this paramedic ever injecting ketamine into another human being again, if he can get a job as a paramedic anywhere else?
Next question: does he retain his job?
Yeah, I think he was fired. But maybe the probation is he can't do any crimes for the next 4 years. I don't know. But he took a life and got 4 years probation. Probation. Now, before I talk about Peter and Randy Rodema, tell you that Officer Jason Rosenblatt was acquitted of any wrongdoing. However, there's a photograph of him at an Elijah McClain memorial, supposedly mocking the whole situation. And Nathan Woodyard was found not guilty. Both of them were fired from the police department. I think it was Aurora, Colorado Police Department. And received back pay for the years between the time of the incident and the time that their trials ended with not guilty verdicts. And they quit. I mean, they were fired. I'm sorry, they were fired or walked away with basically a check for $500,000 for back pay. Peter, paramedic, he was given 5 years. Now, I don't know the ins and outs of it and why he got 5 years. And Jeremy Cooper, the paramedic who actually injected the ketamine into Elijah McClain, got 4 years probation. But Peter got 5 years in jail. He's doing time. Randy Rodema got 14 months. The police officer who initially ordered the paramedics to inject this kid, who basically told the paramedics, kill this man. 14 months for taking the life of a kid who was probably one of the sweetest people anyone ever would meet. And is appealing that 14 months because it's a hardship on his family that he's in jail. Elijah McClain's mother said she didn't want Jeremy Cooper's apology or his contrition. She wanted her baby back. She said that as her son begged for his life, Jeremy Cooper, as a paramedic, offered him no medical assistance. As her son started to convulse, he offered no medical assistance. As this young man said, "I'm doing nothing wrong. Please do not inject me," Jeremy Cooper still went ahead and injected this kid. My number here is 443-267-6558. I would love someone to call in and let's have this conversation. There is nothing anyone can say to me that would make me think, yeah, 4 years probation is acceptable. There's nothing anyone can say to me that 14 months in jail for killing a young man who was doing nothing but walking while black, minding his business, deserved to die. And I don't want to bring up all of the pain that this city dealt um, with the Freddie Gray situation, what happened in St. Louis, what this country went through, and is probably still going through. We saw a couple of years where it was the biggest story in the country of how black men and women were being murdered by police as if it was hunting season. And I don't want to say that we shouldn't talk about that, but it's no longer the big story. It's probably still happening and nobody's talking about it. And I'm using generalizations because we've seen it before. Until people started dying and getting in the news, nobody talked about. We as black people knew how, we'd all had the conversations and were given the talk. If you're pulled over by police, keep your hands in plain sight. If you're black, keep your hands on the steering wheel. Don't make any sudden movements. Don't let your pride be the last thing that you do in this life that ends up getting you killed. But it became a big story for 3 or 4 years about how many times black people were just treated as if we were second class. We weren't even citizens. We were here to be killed by the police, and no ramifications for the cops. No real ramifications for the cops. Who was the kid in Cleveland? Tamir Rice, 9-year-old,
yeah,
playing with a toy gun. Cops rolled up on him like he was Al Capone, jumped out the car and just gunned this kid down. 9 years old. 9 years old. But when the verdict was handed down the other day, last week, that Jeremy Cooper got 4 years probation, it crushed my soul, man. I'll be honest with you. It crushed my soul. Because just like George Floyd in Minnesota, where there was unmistakable video evidence of this person's life being taken from them, you had police body camera footage showing this kid just minding his business, just walking home. And he died unnecessarily. And I guarantee you, and I know I'm going to catch this from some people I know, oh, you're just being racist. No, I'm being realistic. White kids don't have to have that talk. They don't have to be aware of what happens if they're pulled over. Because they don't face the same potential ramifications being pulled over by the police. You know, I can't remember the gentleman's name in South Carolina who was pulled over for a busted taillight and was shot in the back by a police officer and then had a gun planted on him. It's a 51-year-old man. I think at the time he was 51, 54, somewhere in that age. He was the same age as I was at the time. But white people, white kids, they don't have to deal with that. They can walk down the street in any neighborhood, in any city in this country, and won't get stopped by the police just because they look suspicious. And our kids do. Hell, our grown-ass men do. But when you have indisputable video evidence of what happened, some lawyers have to be very masterful, and maybe they have to also be pretty lucky to fight for the rights of those people, for them to actually get justice. Now, a lot of people, a lot of families get paid, man. Freddie Gray's family got paid. The Tamir Rice family got paid.
Can I ask a question though, Yale?
Yeah, man.
You a dad, you're definitely a dad because we already talked about that, right?
Yeah.
How much do your kids cost? So how much are you willing to sell your kids for?
See, that's a good question, Rock, because my grandmother once said about her children, she wouldn't sell any of them for less than $1.50. But there's no amount of money that would satisfy my heart if you took my child's life. And I'm going to segue into something real quick. When you said that, it made me think of the whole Michael Jackson situation, right? Now, nobody died. Michael is dead, but none of these kids died. But if you thought someone had molested your child, boy or girl, if you thought a celebrity or any person had molested your child, how much money would you be asking for as compensation?
My bail.
You don't even got to bail me out. I'm gonna do the time because I'm coming for you. And now look, me being me, who I am, I'm always me. At the time, I said Michael Jackson didn't have enough money for me to keep me from going to his house and beating like that, beat it like he was gonna catch it. If it was Mike Tyson, maybe my child was going to have to make some adjustments in their life. But on a serious tip, I can never be convinced and have never been convinced. I'm going to need to see hard evidence that Michael Jackson actually molested any of these kids. And for the parents that got paid for it, let me be clear. None of those parents were blind or deaf to the allegations of what Michael Jackson supposedly did from other cases. So for you to take your child there and allow your child to travel with and stay over with Mike, and do all these things with Michael Jackson, you were deliberately putting your child in jeopardy. You can't tell me that no one knew of the allegations, whether you believe them to be true or not. You don't do that if you think that where there's smoke, there's got to be fire. You don't do that if you have your child's best interests at heart, right? So to put your child in that situation, an unsupervised situation with a 40-year-old man, to let your child spend the night, sleep in the same bed with a 40-year-old man, you don't have any problem with it until it's time to cash that check, to get that check, then you're more wrong than anything Michael Jackson could be accused of. And those parents faced no ramifications for that. So there's no amount of money that can be paid to me to compensate for the loss of my child or my loved one or my family member. That's not justice. If I go out on the street, grab some 21-year-old white woman walking down the street, hold her down and inject her with ketamine and she dies, you think I'm getting 4 months probation? 4 years probation?
The fact that you touched a white woman will give you 18 months.
If I'm lucky.
Yeah.
If I got a good lawyer. Let me tell you a story that happened to me when I was a kid. I was in 4th grade. We had moved from Catonsville. People who know Baltimore, we moved from Catonsville to Woodlawn. I was in 4th grade when we moved. So it's not a far distance, but it's my mom was moving up in her career and we could afford more. So we moved from Catonsville to Woodlawn. I started going to Chadwick Elementary School. I was one of 3 Black kids in Chadwick Elementary School at the time. My 4th grade teacher was a white woman who had never taught a Black student before. I'm not giving her an excuse. I'm definitely not giving her a pass. I'm just telling you what it was. So I'm in this class, and let me tell you, the other 2 kids was a girl. I'm sorry, there was 3 other Black kids in the school. There was a girl, she was in 6th grade, and there were 2 other kids, and they were in special education class. So I was pretty much by myself. There was a girl who sat beside me, and boy, girl, alphabetical order, that crap they put us through. And we had an argument or whatever, and she called me a nigger. Now, this is in the middle of the 60s. End of the 60s, beginning of the 70s. I knew enough that if someone called me a nigger, my mother loved Martin Luther King Jr., but my mother grew up in Cherry Hill. So that's all I got to say about that. So when this little white girl called me a nigger, I gave her a pop. I'm not talking about a soda pop for those people who don't know. I'm not talking about a popsicle. I'm not talking about a candy on a stick. I popped her, gave her a hit. She screamed like I had murdered her gerbil, like she lost it. Teacher came over, grabbed me, snatched me up, took me out in the hallway, and started reading me the riot act. How dare you touch her? How dare you do that to her? What kind of person are you? And I'm in 4th grade. We had just moved to this area. I knew nobody in school. I knew nobody in my neighborhood. And I tried to explain why I hit her. And I told her, she called me a bad word. What word did she call you? I told her the word she called me. Oh, she would never do that. I can still see it. She dragged me to the principal's office, and I didn't cry. She dragged me to the principal's office, sat me down, and the principal called the little girl's house and the little girl's mother and older brother, who was in high school, came up to the school, and my teacher, the vice principal, the girl's mother, and her brother, and the little girl sat me down in this office, and they read me the riot act and told me all the implications of what was going to happen to me for putting my hands on this little white girl. No one even tried to call my mother. No one tried to call anybody in my family. Rock, I didn't shed a tear till I was home, sitting in the house. My mother came home, saw something was wrong with me, knew something was wrong with me, and made me tell her what was wrong with me. And I started crying. And I told her that I got in trouble in school. Because that's the one thing. I didn't want to get in trouble in school. Like, yeah, I didn't want my mother to, that whole thing we talked about, make her look bad on her job. What? And I was too young to understand the real implications of what was happening. But I did not want my mother to be upset with me. So I cried when I told her. My mother lost her entire mind. But my mom was and still is. My mother is, like, I tease you about Nicole being Luca Brasi. My mother was Michael Corleone. She calmly called our neighbors in Catonsville, our former neighbors in Catonsville, Mr. Tom Boyer. Mr. Tom Boyer, rest his soul, God bless him, was elected the first Black man on the Baltimore County school board. And she called Mr. Tom Boyer, and they went in. Right? Now, this was just desegregation that really just started happening in Baltimore and Baltimore County. So if it were today, we would have gotten some money, but here I am, 62 years old, and this story still kind of haunts me a little bit. I still get a little bit antsy even when I tell it. And I end up going through school with that little girl, 5th grade, 6th grade, and all through junior high school. We had junior high schools back then. There was no such things called middle school. And the little girl and I and other kids in class, we were friendly. I still have friends from those days. I don't really associate with them because we moved from Woodlawn to Columbia years later. But yeah, if that had happened these days, my mother would have gotten some money. She probably wouldn't have given me any of it, but she would have gotten some money. But yeah, so today, if I go out on the street today and assault a white woman and inject her with anything, whether it kills her or not, I'm going to jail for real. It's not going to be 4 years probation. It's not going to be 14 months in jail. It's not going to be, I'm not going to be acquitted. I'm not a police officer and I'm not white. And that's just the reality. These men murdered Elijah McClain. And I remember when I heard the story, I was kind of numb. Like, it was so much. It was happening. It seemed like every day we were hearing more and more about Black people being killed. When I heard the story, my cousin first told me the story. She broke down crying, telling me the story. And I was just numb, like, here's another one. Like, it's a thing. And then the narrative that, we were hearing and people were saying and felt with their chest out, Black men are endangered species in this country, right? I don't believe that. Do you believe that?
Nope.
I don't believe it. I don't believe Black people are an endangered species. I'm going to tell you why I don't believe that. Because the government fights to save and protect endangered species. F around and shoot a bald eagle. You're going to find out. You know, the government has moved to stop damming rivers for a certain species of fish. I'll never forget. I always remember the snail darter. I don't even remember what river it was. I don't remember what part of the country it was. But the government stopped the damming of a stream because this fish, this snail darter fish, which if I remember was about the size of a pinky finger, would have been wiped out had this river been dammed up. The stream had been dammed up. So the government fights to protect endangered species. So Black people, we don't even rise to the level of protected in this country. Truth of the matter is, we have been considered less than human since we were forced to come here. Our ancestors were forced to come here, and we've been called lazy ever since we were no longer required to work for free. But back to Jeremy Cooper, Mr. 4 years probation. Back to Randy Rodema, Mr. 14 months in jail for murder. Even paramedic Pete, whose last name I can't pronounce, 5 years for taking the life of someone who was doing nothing wrong. Man, anybody who thinks that Black people have no reason to complain ain't living in the same country that I'm living in. Anybody that says the Black Lives Matter movement is a racist or terrorist organization ain't living in the same country I'm living in. Ain't living in the same reality I'm living in. You know, my old tagline for the Nitelifer was, we cannot keep walking through this life with our eyes wide shut. We see things and we don't see things. You know, after 9/11, slogans all over this country were, see something, say something. We see stuff every day and we say nothing about it. We go through stuff every day. And if we have the nerve to stand up and say, hey, this is wrong, then we're complaining. We're not trying. We're not bringing light to a dark situation. We're belly aching. We ain't worth, you know, we're being troublemakers. Colin Kaepernick lost his NFL career because he tried to bring attention to what was happening and the NFL blackballed him. Players in the NFL lost their careers for joining him in protest. My good friend, Shelly Fabre, who has a show here on this network on Monday nights, one of her co-hosts on her show, Audible Aunties, is a reformed Dallas Cowboys fan, and she said she lost it with Jerry Jones for one comment and one comment alone. Toes on the line. When he insisted his players not kneel. And when it really became apparent that they were on the wrong side of history, I can still see in my mind some of these owners standing hand in hand with their players. not letting them kneel, but standing hand in hand with their players. You know, if I want to roll back and make this talk about sports for a second, Michael Vick went to jail for dog fighting and killing dogs. But Colin Kaepernick lost his whole career because he knelt in protest of the repeated incidents of Black people losing their lives at the hands of the police in this country and no one talking about it. Ray Rice lost his job as a running back for the Ravens for domestic violence. For one incident. For all his career through college and the pros, this kid was known as being one of the best, examples of what an NFL player should be. Good guy awards. And one night, things got out of control with he and his wife, and he knocked her out. There's no disputing that. But instead of giving him another chance or looking at his life in totality and listening to his wife and testimony that they were both equally to blame, he lost his NFL career. He didn't get an opportunity for reform or redemption. But because Colin Kaepernick knelt for the national anthem, and let's be real clear. Let's be real clear. Colin Kaepernick was at first sitting on the bench and refusing to stand for the national anthem, and another NFL player, a former vet, a former military vet, said, "Don't sit for the national anthem. Protest by kneeling. I'll kneel with you in protest." A white dude said, "I'll kneel with you," because as soldiers, we kneel for our fallen comrades. And the media didn't pick up on that story. They picked up on the disrespect the protest was causing. And NFL owners lined up against Colin Kaepernick and the players that protested. But now the NFL has a whole thing. Like they spent this whole 2 seasons of solidarity. They let players put protest statements on their helmets and on their cleats, and they put slogans in the end zone to try to catch up to the backwards way they had been thinking for a few years in the NFL. But to go back with it, Jeremy Cooper, 4 years probation for stabbing a young man with a chemical, injecting this chemical into his system that killed him. Was found guilty of negligent homicide, but given 4 years probation. And Elijah McClain lost his life. I only have a little more than 10 minutes left to go on the show, but if anyone wants to call in, 443-267-6558. I knew when I decided to talk about this tonight, it was going to hit me. And it does. It hurts just to even think about it. But I want people to know that not only were not only did Elijah McClain lose his civil rights, he lost his life. And the people responsible are face no ramifications for it. It's just that simple. They didn't face justice, and Elijah McClain's family got no justice. Elijah McClain got no justice. "14 months in jail for ordering someone to kill somebody else. 4 years probation for actually administering the drug, the chemical that led to the death of a young man who was doing nothing more than just walking home." This isn't 1920, 1924, 1824. This is 2024. And Aurora, Colorado has told you that your life as a Black person is worth 4 years probation. Hey, Shelly Fabre leaned in with the facts. Mike Vick did 23 months in prison for killing dogs. We got a governor of the state, Montana, who wrote a biography and said she killed her puppy. This dog wasn't even a year old. She killed her puppy because he was untrainable, or the puppy was untrainable in her mind, untrainable. So she put the puppy down. And it's okay. And look, I know people who hunt. I know people who hunted with dogs, who still hunt with dogs. They have beagles. And when the dog cannot hunt anymore, the dog is basically a tool for hunting. That dog can be put down, but that dog is not killed when it's a puppy. But is she going to jail? Is she going to do 23 months in prison? No. What she loses out on is the opportunity to be considered Donald Trump's running mate. She loses out on opportunity to be a vice presidential candidate of a man who's about to be convicted of campaign fraud. She loses out on opportunity to be one step away from the presidency because she had the nerve to say no one put a gun to her head. She said, "Hey, I killed this puppy because he was untrainable." She wrote that shit in her own autobiography. And then she said, "Oh, the same day I had a goat that was a problem, and I killed the goat, not for meat, but because the goat was annoying. I took him to a pit and put one behind his ear. Oh, by the way, the goat survived, but I'm going back in the house and get more shells, and I'm putting this goat down." And so animal cruelty isn't okay if you're a Black man and a sports hero, but it's okay if you're the governor of a state. It's probably Montana or Wyoming. And I apologize for not having those facts. But that was okay. But Michael Vick went to jail for 23 months for killing dogs. And Pete, the paramedic, Randy Rodema, police officer, got 14 months. in jail for killing a human being. It's a different world, man. It's a different day, but it's the same. It's the same. Anyway, look, I didn't want to bring you down this week, but I'm going to bring it to you every week. I'm going to tell you the story, and you're going to hear the whole story, and not just what the media has told you, not just what we're being spoon-fed. You know, this story did not get the type of exposure that it should have gotten. The man who put the needle in the arm of Elijah McClain got 4 years probation. If we were still reading newspapers, this would be a below the fold page 4 story. Probably people under 25 don't get that. But, you know, us old heads who got our news from watching television and reading newspapers. In other words, it wasn't front page. It wasn't front page. It wasn't second page. It was an oh, by the way story. It wasn't even in the A block on national news. Right now, all the A block is about Donald Trump. The B block is about Donald Trump. This was probably the end of the C block. So next week, I hope to have a more upbeat story, but I'm going to still bring the truth as I see it. And I'm going to give you the news and the information that we need to try to stay educated. And we bring the old slogan back. We can't keep walking through this life with our eyes wide shut. Nitelifer, Circle of Sanity. I hope you subscribe to the YouTube channel. I hope you subscribe to listening to me, watching me on Rock Med Nation here on Facebook. Follow me on the Nitelifer here on Facebook and on Instagram. I'm here to educate and let's talk about it. Mr. DJ.
Yes.
If you please.
The Nitelifer, the Night Circle of Sanity. Radio show. What you got? What you got? What you got?
This is State of Emergency.
The Nitelifer, the Night Circle of Sanity. Radio show. Radio show.
Let's go get them, guys.
The Nitelifer, the Night Circle of Sanity. Radio show.
Show me what you got, little mama. Show me what you got, pretty lady. Show me what you got, shawty. Show me what you got, baby. Hands up and wave, 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 wave.
The Nitelifer, the Night Circle of Sanity.
You want answers, you want answers, you want answers, you want answers.
I want the truth, I want the truth, I want the truth.
You can't handle the truth, handle the truth, handle the truth.
The Nitelifer, the Night Circle of Sanity. Radio show. Radio show. Radio show.